So Brandon, you work in the video. How long have you worked in the video game industry?
Oh, geez. It's been about 15 years now.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah, I got into E3 back in 2004 under an industry badge.
Okay, so that was 19
it's
years
free.
ago.
Yeah, yeah. So
So a minute now.
yeah, a little bit. It's been a bit.
And you've stayed kind of in that industry for a long time.
Yeah.
And pretty much consistently since then. And you've worked on a lot of different types of games, different types of consoles, PC,
I've worked
everything.
on a lot of stuff, just tons.
Would it be fair to say like the gamut, like mobile, console, PC, kind of everything?
Yeah, not as much in mobile, but a lot with PC and console.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll have Chad ask that. Is there
Yeah.
any games you can disclose that our chat would know that you have worked on in the past?
So there's NDAs, of course, so I can't talk about some of it, especially that's recent.
Yeah.
But I can talk about, I worked at Nintendo a long time ago.
Okay.
Right? So I've worked on the very first title that I worked on was called Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn.
I remember Fire
Right?
Emblem.
Yeah, that was for the Wii. And that game sticks in my mind just because it was so much fun, and then it came back because it was broken.
Mm-hmm.
There was a problem with the first edition that went out where it would just hard lock people's consoles.
Mm-hmm.
It would just crash them. Which at that time, when that happens with your Wii, it makes this awesome and doesn't do anything until you just like pull the power cord out of it. So that was fun.
Would you say overall that the industry has evolved good, bad, kind of neutral, kind of stayed the same?
I think it's evolved for the better. And here's why, right? Back in the day, geez, I forget how old I am. Back in the day, it was so cowboy in terms of how everything was run, right? Nowadays, there's a lot of business. There's, we're talking about Microsoft and Activision and mergers and acquisitions and all of that.
It's become much more structured,
Yeah,
the development of games.
There's more of a structure. It's not fully structured, but there's more of a structure. But, in the olden days, even when we're talking about the Wii, that era, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, there was some semblance of business, right? You had EA and them trying to do business. They were the real drivers on some of that, although in bad ways, but still they were drivers in that. Everything else was very much, there's no standards, there's no a lot of things. Consoles have been a real driving force for standards.
Mm-hmm.
Every console has a certification program for their games.
Which kind of goes all the way back to Nintendo, who invented the first, after the Atari collapse.
Yeah.
Nintendo really, it was that seal, right?
That seal
Going all the way back to the NES, but they were the first one that
mean too much.
Yeah,
but yeah.
But
now it means
they were
a
the
lot
ones
more.
that went, hey, we're gonna have a standardization process before we start releasing games, because they didn't want to have another Atari mess.
Yeah.
Where everybody freaking who was it? Like the Quaker Oats people were making video games back during the Atari days.
Yeah. Anyone could make a game and send it to Nintendo or Atari or whoever, right? And get it through whatever process that needed to be made to get carts made of it, right? I mean, E.T. exists.
There was a Domino's game that featured the Noid.
Yes, avoid the Noid.
I love that.
I saw it speedrun at GDQ.
Nice.
One year. That was fun.
What was that? What console was that on? It was a 99 for DOS.
Yeah.
It came out in 1989 for DOS. And there was the Domino's Pizza video game.
So a thing about Avoid the Noid, they had the whole Noid campaign, and it went away because there was, I believe his name was Peter Noid or something like that, and he he sued him.
They were bringing back the Noid not too long ago.
Yeah, well,
Anytime Domino's wants to distract
times have
everybody.
changed now, but
So you kind of hinted about this in some of our previous segments when we were talking about unionization in the entertainment industry.
yes.
Obviously, there's been a huge push for a long time.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of talk about it in the people I know in the video game industry about unionization, but it never seems to quite grab.
It's happening now, though.
Why do you think it's taken so long for them to kind of get to this point?
Well, first of all, it's so cowboy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. But for the longest time, it was very much the people who worked on a game were contractors. Everyone was contract.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this goes back to the original Microsoft days,
Mm-hmm.
where there was a lawsuit because there were so many contractors, and that's all they were, that there was a lawsuit saying, hey, I've been here for 7+ years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an employee, but I don't get employee things. And so there was a lawsuit, and it created this whole time on, time off thing to really make people
the time that I
contractors.
interviewed there as a contractor for Xbox, and this was many, many years ago,
Yeah.
that was one of the things they told you was that unless you get converted to FTE after your first contract, it
Yep.
was a minimum 60-day break.
Now it's 18/6. So 18 months on, 6 months off for Microsoft. Nintendo, every year you have to take 2 months off. And that's the way it is throughout the industry with contractors. So a lot of that has been getting to the point where legal teams are saying, no, you need to stop hiring as many contractors. So then they started getting more full-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets more benefits. But especially in the US, where 49 out of 50 states are at-will states, Montana being the one that's not. It's got a little asterisk on there, which is weird. I never thought it would be Montana. But it's so easy to go, cool, we're done with the game, layoffs.
And then, so I have an acquaintance who's been in the industry for a long time. He worked on the last BattleTech video game series and things like that. And that's something that he told me, and he actually got out of video games a few years back because he would tell me, he's like, look, you get onto a project, and you're there for 14, 18, 24 months, and the minute the game ships, 80% of the people, the FTEs,
Yep.
who were on that project are just laid off.
Yep. FTEs cost more money.
And then they just rehire
And-
people for the next project as they need
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it made it super, super, like,
yeah,
very
that's the
high
way it
highs,
goes.
very low lows.
That's why some of these more cyclical games are a lot better for the industry in terms of people working.
The ones that release yearly or bi-yearly.
Yeah, you may hate the fact that there's a Madden game every year, or that
But it's
there's
keeping some people
a
employed.
Call of Duty every year, or but it's keeping those teams employed all year round, right? Because there's always, hey, this one's done. We now have our continuing team moving on to that, whereas everything else moves somewhere else. Yeah, EA being so big is great because they've got all these new projects that are just in the pipeline, and they can just move to start doing a new project.
Whereas smaller studios just they don't have that capability.
Exactly, yeah.
So do you think that, I know you said that they're starting to push for it. Do you think that I know within tech, one of the ways they've kept unions at bay is they've ensured that they are paying just enough, right? And I'm saying not bad, but they're like, look, man, you make the low six figures. Do you really want to unionize and give up that and da-da-da-da? And they pay them enough where it disincentivizes. It's not like UPS drivers or other things where, you really need this union to get wages that are even going to feed your family. Whereas with video games, again, a lot of the times they're like, we're going to pay you enough to where it's just not, you're not incentivized to get a union.
That's not actually true. It really depends on where you are, though, in the video game industry.
So I know QA is one of the areas that have been talking a lot about unionizing because a lot of QA tester people who are very good at their jobs do not get paid very much.
Correct. I'm a manager for a QA department, and we're third party.
Mm-hmm.
So, we don't work on our own stuff, which is why I can't talk a lot about stuff. But the way that I like to describe it is there's a passion tax, right? Video games is something that everyone wants to get into. How do you get in? Well, you could be a programmer, but that requires, there's a gate for that because of all this schooling and the skills required for that. Game design, again, same thing. Art, again, same thing. You need all of these skills and degrees in order to get into all of those. What do you not need a degree to get into? And in fact, can get into if you only have a high school diploma.
QA.
If that, QA. Because we'll take anyone and we'll teach you. And,
And like you said, there's a passion. I actually really like that term. Because I know, not just in video games, but in a lot of ancillary specifically geek industries like tabletop RPGs, board game design, stuff like that. Like you look at what some of even the big companies pay for a developer for like a tabletop RPG. They don't pay very well. And again, like you said, there's a passion tax because it's like, look, if you don't take it, there's 150 mofos behind you who will.
All I have to do is wait until, July and high school gets out. There's another graduating class.
And there's a fresh batch of 18, 19-year-olds who would love to be QA.
They would love to be QA, and, all they want to do is play games all day, which it's not playing games all day. QA is not playing games all day. There's a lot of work behind it, but that's what everyone thinks it is. And so, companies can charge peanuts for it to the point where minimum wage catches up to what they're paying. Nintendo tries to be good about staying ahead of minimum wage. A couple others do that as well. Others, not at all. They just go, what's minimum wage? Great, that's what we're paying. And I think in the last 5 years, we've started seeing a lot more respect for QA in the industry, just in general. But QA is where it's going to start, where unionization is going to start. And there's going to be one of those unions, they're going to get their claws in.
Start with one of the bigger companies, like an EA
they're
or
going to start up.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Ubisoft.
One of the Montreal branch of my company is talking about it.
There you go.
So
it's going to come.
Yep.
So if there was one thing you could change about the video game industry writ large, like suddenly Brandon Victor is the God Emperor of video games, what is the one thing you would change about the industry?
I mean, I would get rid of the passion tax, honestly.
Which I think also comes in the case of working conditions, because you hear a lot about crunch at the developer level. And I know I've heard of it at the QA level too, where when you're getting close to a launch and you're still hitting game-breaking bugs, like you're not leaving.
The crunch is horrid. And a lot of that is they're putting a release date so far back in time. They're saying this is when we're going to release. And it's sometimes it's not feasible, and you end up with Cyberpunk. And sometimes it is feasible, and you've got developers really polishing something, and you get a really nice game. So, removing, I think to fix a lot of it, if you remove street dates being released as early as they are, that could solve a lot of problems.
You're running into marketing issues there, which sucks.
Yeah.
You're running into huge market. Yeah, it sucks. Well, I'm curious to see how the industry is going to keep developing. It's fascinating to me.
Hey, look, you made it to the end of the video. So that means that you need to like and favorite and subscribe and turn on the notifications so you can find out about all the other cool stuff. And check down in the description because our address is down there, so you can come hang out with us in store. So thanks for watching the end.